Welcome back to Third Phase of Moon. My name's Blake Cousins, and our special guest, nuclear physicist and godfather of UFOlogy, Stanton Friedman. Stanton, thanks for joining us right here at Third Phase of Moon.
It's my privilege. I may even find what third phase of the moon looks like. It means...
All right, Stanton, let's get to it. You've been involved with this for over 54 years. What, in your opinion, is on the topic of the global cosmic Watergate and the hopeful disclosure? Do you think disclosure will ever happen?
I think the only way it will happen is if somebody like the equivalent of the New York Times or the Washington Post did what Woodward and Bernstein did to the political Watergate. In other words, devote the resources. It's real easy to blow the lid off this thing. 6 months would do it, because the evidence is overwhelming that there's a cover-up and that there are aliens visiting and so forth. The problem is that we have a resistance on the part of the media. They think that, well, if this were true, they would know about it because it would be very important, and they don't, so it must not be, and why waste any time or money? It did take money to get Watergate out in the open, as you recall. So I'm not an optimist, and also I better surprise you, or maybe not, by saying I don't think everything should be disclosed. I think there are national security matters here. I worked under security for 14 years. Why should the United States put data out on the table, maybe new technological data, if the Russians and Chinese and others don't also put out their data? That doesn't make sense to me. You never hand your potential enemies new technology to use in case they feel like it. So I think we do need to recognize that a new era has begun for mankind. That is, we're not the big shots on the block anymore. And some people don't like that. No government wants its people to think of themselves as earthlings. We're still in the nationalist era, you know. And so there are real barriers to it, but I certainly don't think everything ought to be dumped out on the table. I mean, black budgets are running, depending on who you believe, $30 to $50 billion a year. There's a lot going on. And some of that is legitimately classified.
With the advent of cell phone technology and people having cameras readily available to them, we've been having mass sightings sent to us right here at Third Phase of Moon. Do you think there might be a reason for this? And are they preparing for invasion?
It's not easy to judge how much activity is going on. I've been checking my audiences around the world for years and years. And typically at the end of my lecture, of course, I would never ask at the beginning, 10% believe that they've seen a flying saucer. But when I ask how many of you reported it, typically it's only 10% of the 10%. And the biggest reason being they think I was some kind of a nut. So it's very hard to judge what's going on. I mean, MUFON is getting 600 plus cases a month. And yet I've had people just the other day, somebody said, well, how come we haven't had any sightings recently? There's plenty of sightings. You don't hear about them. And so if there's a bump in the curve and there's some good coverage on the media, you may get other people willing to come forward. But until that happens, most of them sit back. So we don't have a very good picture at all of how much is happening all over the world. And I still get people saying, well, how come they're only seen in the United States? They're not. I've lectured in 18 other countries besides all 50 states and 10 Canadian provinces. And everywhere I go, people have seen UFOs.
Very interesting, and it is very amazing what you're saying here. You know, you broke the Roswell case in the 1970s, and there are people and eyewitnesses coming forward to this day. Do you think there are cover-ups on the crash retrievals? And, what is your topic on the whole?
Well, let's face it, most of the original witnesses are dead. And if they come forward, that would be a truly remarkable event. But occasionally we get somebody new. We get somebody saying, oh, my uncle told me he's getting old and he doesn't want to go to his grave keeping the secret. But Roswell is still attracting big crowds at every festival, early July. I'll be there this year, as I was last year and the year before and so forth. And I use it as an example. The other day I gave a talk in Texas, Laredo, Texas. And it had originally been canceled because the person in charge said, well, nobody's interested in this stuff, guys. So they canceled it. Then a good group of serious investigators down there came forward, and we had over 600 people the other day. And she was there, the one who had canceled it, and was astonished. These people are all interested? Well, I will guarantee you they're all interested. And I have had as many as 2,000 people to a lecture. So don't tell me nobody's interested. And often the campus will tell me that's the biggest crowd we've had, for an off-campus speaker coming here. So the interest is there. The fear of ridicule is still there. And if they stress my professional background as a scientist, working for Westinghouse, GE, General Motors, etc., and on far-out classified, eventually canceled programs. That was my specialty, canceled programs, nuclear airplanes, fission rockets, fusion rockets, that sort of thing. Then they'll show up figuring, GE and Westinghouse don't hire nuts, do they? Well, maybe they do, I don't know. In other words, this laughter curtain is real. And it takes a lot of effort to lift that, to get people to speak up and think up, and especially the ancient academics and fossilized physicists who think that the only place research gets done is in academia, right? Wrong. And just to give you an example, when I was working on nuclear airplanes a long time ago in 1958 for General Electric, our budget that year was $100 million. We employed 3,500 people, of whom 1,100 were engineers and scientists. That was a lot of money for 1958, and we're not talking 3 professors and 20 grad students. We're talking 3,500 people with 1,100 engineers and scientists. So there's a lot going on. We didn't build a nuclear-powered airplane. We learned a lot about all kinds of technology. So you need to be very careful in making any kind of conclusions about this phenomena, because you don't know what's going on underneath the surface.
That makes perfect sense, Stanton. It's speculated. The reason for disclosure, and it no longer needs to be legal, is because, all the technology is in private companies. What do you think of this, and how do you think this could be resolved?